Hey guys, Thomas the Solar Genie here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Cocaine Bear. If you end up enjoying this full movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly, and fourth to my Discord server, where you can join, collab, and chill your own content for free. And chilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into Cocaine Bear. Now, obviously I had seen the trailers for this quite a few times, so marketing was on this one for sure. However, I am a bit late on it, as a bunch of Let's Plays just rolled into my purview, from Atomic Heart to trying to post the rest of the Let's Plays that are being done right now. So there was a lot more catch-up happening, so that made me roll back this review, so I do apologize on that. But as always, I try to be as objective as possible with these reviews. And with that, we can go over what happens in the actual movie. How about that? So, based on our little intro opener, we get a little text crawl, and when I immediately saw this text crawl and what was it by, I immediately thought, why did this movie market itself, or why isn't one of the genres it's classified by isn't a comedy? Because this is sourced by this dialogue that it's, talking about. It is talking about bears and stuff like that, and the source, though, is Wikipedia, which, isn't something you ever see often. It's usually by, some philosopher or, some ancient biblical text, usually. You usually don't see the word from Wikipedia ever appear. It seems, again, almost comical in nature, based on the rarity of that even popping up, it being the joke, as if. And again, I do feel like a lot of this movie is undercut by it not being recognized as a comedy, again, in its genre, which is, again, bizarre to me. And, furthermore, it's apparently based on true events, quote-unquote. Now, obviously, when this happens in any horror movie, there is always the want or desire to figure out of how much of the true events are, shifted, how much of them are changed. Again, based off of is usually, or inspired by, it's a different word, inspired by true events. So, true events happened, and then this inspired this idea, is what I'm trying to get at. Inspired by should tell you a lot about what this type of movie is. It's taking something that was true and then extrapolating some other type of story from it, again. So again, I almost feel like that in itself, doubled by the Wikipedia thing, also doubles in that sort of comedic edge to this movie, and the fact that it's literally called Cocaine Bear, which, seems like a ridiculous movie premise, if we're just being real here. Anywho, we cut to our first little actual scene here, where we are following these pairs of young kids, probably in their 11, 12, 13 age range, I'm guessing. But they're out in the woods. We are following Dee Dee and Henry pretty early on here. And they're the ones who initially find some of these cocaine packets, or the movie, I should say, actually before our little message and before our little detour into the inspired by true events, we actually get a sort of preset scene with this guy in this plane, and He's acting all wild, probably already on some of his own cocaine, very likely, and the plane dropping a lot of its payload of said cocaine into the forest is essentially what happened here at the very, very beginning. So it's in my notes. I do apologize if I did that out of order. I don't know why. That's something I would typically do if I weren't having notes, but I actually did have my notes, and I still did that for some reason, and I apologize. But I'm, gonna still stick through this take, because I like to expose when I do something stupid sometimes. Anyway, with the kids in the park, they find some of these cocaine packets, and the Henry of the two says that he has tried some before, apparently, I guess trying to play off this sort of cool, like, impress the girl sort of situation. I don't know. They're young, impressionable kids, so maybe that's the route that they're attempting to go here, question mark. But she partakes she ends up partaking first, even though they were sort of goading each other a little bit here, and she dispenses of said cocaine pretty quickly. Henry tries to do the same after the fact, and isn't all that successful either. But they cross paths with little old Cocaine Bear. They see it first in the distance. And we see the two run away. And we cut away from this little moment to learn more of their situation later on. We then cut to a pair, and my notes are a little bit disjointed here on this part, that are sort of going through the park initially. We have Chris and some sort of state forest police person. Forest ranger, I suppose, is a good way of putting it. But the bear pulls Jane, I believe her name was Jane anyway, her leg away, and causes and cuts to after this attack. We cut to our different group. We cut to the drug dealers of this movie. Of course, there had to be drug dealers to get cocaine in this situation. Seems apt. Anyway, so we have Andrew and I believe his name is David, if I remember correctly. And David and what's his name? I believe his name is Chris. Is these two that are talking to this elder cocaine drug dealer guy. And he's essentially telling them to look out and find the missing packets, because a lot of money was poured into that. We then cut to our two detectives. We have Bob and Reva. And they're looking over the scene, or one scene in particular, where they find some cocaine near-ish the area of where the cocaine was, landed. And we get some another quick cut here of David and Sid, again, trying to pinpoint where the drugs have landed. we see the young girl from before they attack, or I think this is the way it presents, Dee Dee, who talks with her doctor mom about something or other, and Dee Dee's being a little bit of a smart aleck in the scene, I think, if I remember correctly. Again, my notes are piss poor for this review, so I apologize in advance. I'm trying to remember things that happen here a little bit too, based off of my notes. So, we have Eddie, who's drunk at the bar. He's the one David is going to get to find the drugs. And Dee Dee, as I was mentioning, is going to hang outside with Henry. Again, leading to that attack we saw earlier. We see more of Bob and Riva, our two detectives, and Bob is talking about his plans with the dog or whatever, because he has a little dog. So we see the kids head further into the forest. This is where the film catches up with the kids actually attempting to do the drugs. And the bear chasing them. So David and Eddie are moving in on the cocaine as the two drug guys. And the mom of Dee Dee, the doctor mom, goes to the ranger station. And she meets up with Peter, and her as well. They arrive and they head out, and shortly after, Eddie and David finally arrive on the scene of the park. David enters the restroom where he encounters a trio of younger thugs, teenagers who are like, "Give me your money," or stuff like that, and David fights them off. They force the first attacker to show them where the drugs are because he had a packet on him. Meanwhile, Bob is checking in with a call that was made in here a while ago. And we see by this point that Henry is on top of a tree. He's been spotted by the cop and the Pete guy. He's in the tree, like pretty high up too. And the bear appears, and then the Pete guy goes up the other tree, and the bear initially goes after the one Henry's at, and then when Pete is exposed to more cocaine, the bear quickly shifts and climbs the other tree at a ridiculous pace to kill that guy, and this allows Henry to escape. All the while, the Henry and the mom escape because the mom was like right there at that point. So we cut back to now the cop and the shop owner getting accosted by said cocaine bear, and attacks the cop first, ripping off a part of her, or like clawing at her leg. So yeah, after all that nonsense, the cop gets back to flees to the store that she was at, and sees two of the said punks that I mentioned earlier, while the third is being forced to show where the drugs are. The cop there shoots one of them when the cocaine bear eventually makes his way over, and her misfire. Again, this scene also epitomizes of why this wasn't a comedy, or not sold as a comedy or not seen as a comedy, again, baffles me. Considering how absurd that whole moment was. Absurdist comedy moment there. So anyways, Chris, David, and the first thug that they beat up arrive or they're moving along as Bob finally arrives at the park itself. Like, he was inching closer and closer. All the while, we cut to the mom, who begins to follow this paint trail that Dee Dee left behind, because apparently she wanted to paint something in the park or something along those lines with Henry, instead of going to school, is like the whole reason they're even out there in the first place. An ambulance arrives, and the two medics see the scene. They get to the main building, the Ranger building, and this Tom guy, not me, enters or looks through the second door that leads right to Cocaine Bear's, where it's currently positioned, and we see the other medic trying to glean information from the knocked out cop. But due to things not being communicated properly fast enough, Tom is the one accosted by said bear and is pinned down through the door frame. The actual door frame, like the bear is on top of it and he's beneath it currently. So he manages to throw out a red duffel bag, which probably has even more cocaine in it, considering the bear goes for that instead of him, and that allows him to get to her, to the ambulance, with the other one and the cop in tow. They try to drive away. However, we see the bear immediately start to follow them and rampage and eventually leap into the truck and take down all three of them, one by one by one. That's probably the most crazy the movie gets, is this trio of kills that Cocaine Bear gets. Well, technically, the bear killed like two of them, and then the driver smashed into a tree. Anyway, David and Chris go with the young punk, I'll call him at this point, because I don't think he has a name in the movie, at least I don't think he does. All manage to get to the gazebo where he knows where the drugs are, but Bob is already there at the gazebo. He actually arrived first. So we have a little gun-off moment here with mainly David being the one persisting that they need to get the drugs. It's more important. Jail? Nope. You know. But we see that Bob is currently on the roof, and David gets shot by the cop at least. And again, the way he gets shot, again, I'm gonna quadruple down on that seems like a comical bit where the way he's shot is so bizarre. It doesn't even seem like it's possible, where like, I believe it's like his middle finger and his pinky finger are shot off, which is a finger apart. You know how you do that in a single gunshot. I don't know. Maybe he was like, I don't know, like, was he holding his pinky like this, and it's somehow like, was he holding his pinky inward like this, and then it shot like a line through? Like, that's like the only way I can conceivably see that happening, but I don't know how that pans out exactly. At any rate, we finally cut away to Mom and Henry, who get to the river. And we see the bear, cutting back, moves towards the gazebo. And eventually sits on Eddie for quite some time while David and this young punk sort of just stand there for a while. Now I know it seems like a mean thing to say about Eddie, but they probably, or at least the young punk should have. The young punk probably should have abandoned this group at this point in juncture. Let's be serious here. But again, due to its, again, almost obscene comical nature, again, I'm going to keep alluding to why I think this movie is pushing more of a comedy edge rather than anything else. It remains to be seen consistent in that, as they just sort of wait as the bear is sort of sleeping currently. While David currently has a gun, the cop currently has a gun, they are thinking about shooting it earlier, but now they're suddenly not thinking about shooting it now that it's isolated in one spot and isn't doing anything. Again, the level of stupidity there is just baffling. And, you know, at least from David's perspective, there was Eddie underneath. I don't know if the cop had any reason not to do anything there, but whatever. So, David checks on the bear, and it sniffles in on some cocaine in the immediate vicinity at some point. I believe it falls out of his own pocket. And it begins to hug Eddie into this tackling position. A literal bear hug, if you will. But the cop sees this and lures the bear away from the hug by using more cocaine, because at this point the bear is obviously now addicted to said cocaine. However, Bob is shot by the cocaine dealer, the older man we saw earlier in the movie, aka Eddie's dad. Revelation! Speaking of revelations, apparently we also must need Reva also being a part of their actual squad. She went undercover to sell some drugs, apparently. And again, everything Bob says here seems, again, of almost comical nature, of like, you betrayed, well, at first it seems serious, like, you betrayed me, which seems fair, but then he goes over the top, like, you betrayed all of America, like, come on now. That's not a thing that you do when you do drugs, or what, I don't know. Anyway. So the mom and Henry, we cut back to them. They arrive at the cave with being led by the guy from the intro, the pilot, the photographer guy who had the lady lose his leg, and then he ran off. They find Dee Dee, and furthermore, they find two cocaine cubs, which I don't think is revealed in any of the trailers, so that's interesting. So it's actually cocaine bears, plural, so that's a little bit of a hidden fact, I guess. All the while, now reunited, Mom, Dee Dee, and Henry move into the falls of, like, the other side of the cave. It leads to, like, a fall area where there's, like, water running down. Meanwhile, the cocaine distributor, or seller here, I should say, rather, being Sid, being Eddie's father, had them finding some bodies torn along the way. And some of the drugs are collected, and Sid is not satisfied with some. He wants as much as conceivably possible. But Reva sees how far this is going and how much damage has already been caused, so she decides to dip out. and thanks to David stepping in, Sid is unable to threaten her with a gun and shoot her to death. Speaking of threatening people with guns, he does so as he also gets to the other side with with the mom and the trio of them. Now everyone's all in one area, but there's a duffel bag above them on a ledge that's sticking outward and downwards towards him, so he's trying to reach it, but he's trying to get the other people to essentially get it for him. However, Mama Cocaine Bear, because that was revealed at one part of the movie, that it was a female, due to, again, more comical Eddie lines of, like, his head was apparently positioned on her vagina, apparently, is, like, what he actually says in the movie, so that's what he said in the movie, so I'm just reporting what he said. Even though, based on the positioning, that wouldn't make any sense, since they were laying the same way. Again, I don't know. Anyway, due to Cocaine Bear arriving, the mom says that they have to jump into the water, so the trio of herself, Henry, and Dee Dee do so. Eddie and David jump later on, but Sid shoots the bear. Cocaine Bear goes after Sid and has the cubs taken his entrails after being slashed into. The mom checks in with Eddie after being slightly injured in that process at some point. And the cops get there, and we see at some undescript point later in the movie, I don't know when, a new people recording said Cocaine Bear / Cocaine Cubs, and the trio of bears looking at them with intent of, going in. And that was Cocaine Bear. And again, I think a lot of this is sold as a comedy and not so done at the same time. With that being said, I think this is like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 due to that nature of how much the lack of character there still is here. But that is my review of Cocaine Bear. If you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. 1 will head you over to my petition, 2nd and 3rd to my Patreon and PayPal, and 4th to my Discord server. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.